Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman 2. The rematch takes place this weekend on the main card of UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal 2, and I can't wait for this middleweight bout. This fight took place ages ago on the regional scene. Chris Weidman was successful the first time, but now we've got the rematch on the big show of the UFC, and honestly, there is a lot on the line for this matchup because I could definitely see the loser of this one maybe calling it a day because they've just both got some momentum together in the middleweight division. Uriah Hall's on a bit of a win streak right now over Bevon Lewis, and more recently as well, a big win that he had in his career over Anderson Silva that I'm sure was a good win for him. Not really the highest ranked of wins that he's had in his career. Antonio Carlos Jr., he won against him, but Antonio Carlos Jr. was barely ranked in the middleweight division as well. Chris Weidman came down after losing to Dominic Reyes back to the middleweight division and got a good win against Omari Akhmedov as well. So both guys have got a little bit of forward momentum in the middleweight division right now, and if they win this one, I'm assuming they're going to want to fight against someone in like the top 6 region. They're looking forwards after this one. I don't see the winner of this one looking backwards to another contender coming up the rankings. I think the winner of this one's probably earned a big name, at least in the top 10 of the middleweight division, but I know for a fact if Uriah Hall wins, he's probably going to be calling out Israel Adesanya when he's ranked number 8 in the world, which is just Uriah Hall stuff, I guess. But even still, really looking forward to this matchup. In the first fight, Chris Weidman... Well, let's just talk about the first fight. Chris Weidman annihilated him in the first fight. I just watched it again. He took him down when he wanted to. Got him down, landed some good ground and pound shots. There was a moment where Uriah Hall was able to get feet on hips and kick Weidman backwards and use it to get back to his feet, which was a good sign for Uriah Hall back then, especially knowing the wrestler that Weidman was. But then Weidman got him down again, and then there was some moments against the cage, and then Chris Weidman lands that big shot on the chin now that Uriah Hall is looking for the takedown, and it puts Uriah Hall down, and Weidman just beats him up on the ground for a little bit and finishes him in the first round. Pretty easy win for Chris Weidman. What has changed since then? I think Uriah Hall is a little bit more of a disciplined fighter now. He takes his time, but I think that could also be his detriment here against Chris Weidman, and that's what I'm going to bet on happening, to be honest with you guys, because I'll tell you this. He's still my boy! Chris Weidman is still my fucking boy, okay? And he's never not been my boy, and I'll continue to pick him, just like I picked him against Omari Akhmedov, and everyone called me crazy. He's chinny. One punch from Omari Akhmedov and he's going to lose. Chris Weidman still, to this day, has some of the best grappling in the middleweight division, and you can't deny that. It's between him and Jack Hermansson and maybe Marvin Vettori, or I reckon Weidman would out-grapple Vettori if they just went into a grappling match. I reckon he would out-grapple Derek Brunson as well, most likely. Like, Weidman is incredibly underrated in terms of grappling skill, especially in this middleweight division, because at light heavyweight, he went up there. Listen, he got Dominic Reyes down in the first round, which is something that John Jones couldn't do until rounds 4 and 5. So Weidman does have good grappling, but down in the middleweight division, where he's bigger than everyone else and he can really use that imposing figure in the cage, I think he's going to go out there and out-grapple Uriah Hall. After watching the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight back, I mean, Hall is extremely lucky to have won. I'll tell you that much. And it was all because he was landing shots in the clinch and he was the only one doing damage in the fight, and Antonio Carlos Jr. wasn't really doing enough shots, significant strike-wise, and also Uriah Hall got a knockdown in one of the rounds, which stole him the round, even though he lost like 4 minutes of it. But either way, Antonio Carlos Jr. went out there, a guy who's equally had some chin issues in his career, is a little bit older as well, just like Chris Weidman. He went out there and had nearly 11 minutes of control time in a 15-minute fight against Uriah Hall. I reckon Uriah Hall is going to face that same problem against Chris Weidman. I don't see how Chris Weidman is not going to be able to take down Uriah Hall here. I reckon he goes out there, gets down Uriah Hall many times, at least in the first 2 rounds. So maybe I'll call like a 29-28 unanimous decision to Chris Weidman. I think he's going to be able to win the grappling exchanges in the first 2 rounds. I don't see Uriah Hall being able to be submitted on the ground. He's got quite good defense on the ground. Hard to put away in fights unless it's on the feet with like a big punch like Derek Brunson was able to do. But Chris Weidman, I believe he's going to be able to out-grapple him in the first 2 rounds of this bout. Now, it all depends on, in my opinion, for this fight, what happens in that 3rd round, because Uriah Hall has a knack for somehow pulling things off in the later rounds of bouts. And I'll be honest as well, if this was a 5-rounder, I reckon I would pick Uriah Hall by 4th round TKO, in all honesty. Weidman does slow down as the fight goes on, especially when he pushes a hard grappling pace. When he's okay to stand with someone and he can move around and throw some jabs here and there, he seems to be able to keep a bit of a better pace, but the grappling pace is so much more excruciating than the stand-up pace in MMA. So Weidman, if he's going to be grappling in this bout, he is going to slow down in that third round. But I think Uriah Hall needs a little bit more time here to really perform in the rounds that he's known to perform in, like he did against Anderson Silva in his last bout, and like he did against Bevon Lewis as well. Because let's not forget, in that bout with Bevon Lewis, Uriah Hall was getting his ass handed to him for the first 2 rounds, and that is Bevon Lewis, man. Like, I feel like these are some red flags. Don't get me wrong, Weidman has some losses as well. But, like, he's not, like, losing to schmucks here. Like, he beats guys. He loses to Luke Rockhold after doing quite well in the early rounds of that bout. It was a pretty even bout. Then Rockhold took over once Weidman threw that fucking retarded wheel kick. Whatever happened. All good. Goes up against Yoel Romero. Has a decently close fight with Yoel Romero as well. Gets caught with a flying knee in the third round. I reckon that fight could have been 1-1. It could have been 2-0 Romero. Could have been 1-1, though. Weidman was doing really well. Weidman versus Gastelum. He gets caught by Gastelum and he puts Gastelum away by submission. Like, Whittaker just took Gastelum 5 rounds. Like, Weidman, I think, is being a little bit overlooked here because he got KO'd by Dominic Reyes while he was on his back and Reyes rained down a big shot with a hammer fist. Like, these are shots that are going to put people out cold. I know his chin is maybe not where it used to be, but I don't see Uriah Hall just going out there and just going blah, and just lighting up Weidman in the early rounds. And I don't think Uriah Hall can afford to be losing to a guy like Weidman, to be honest with you. Like, Uriah Hall, he needs to lose before he wins. That seems to be a common theme in all of Uriah Hall's performances. Like, even against Anderson Silva, he was losing those early rounds on the feet. And also, something I do want to mention, I know a lot of people see the Chris Weidman fight with Anderson Silva as Weidman just lucking out and getting a big shot on Anderson Silva while he was trying to mock Weidman. But Weidman was dominating Anderson Silva before those moments. Like, in the grappling, got him down, landed good ground and pound shots, was landing good shots on the feet as well. Anderson Silva just started, like, getting a little bit cocky and stuff. Like, he was losing that fight. He was losing that fight with Chris Weidman on both occasions. Like, I know a lot of people called them flukes. But, like, Weidman probably would have went on to Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva for 5 rounds in that bout if that was allowed to go on. But even still, I'm definitely going to be picking Chris Weidman in a 5-rounder. I would entertain the idea of picking Uriah Hall in rounds 4 or 5, or maybe even late in rounds 3. I'm not too sure. I'm not even going to entertain it in a 3-rounder, though. And I take back round 3 if it was a 5-rounder. I reckon it does take until 4 and 5, until Uriah Hall, who has got really good conditioning and does keep his power in the later rounds, is able to catch a bit of a sloppy Weidman as the rounds go on. Because Jacare Souza had to wait until the 3rd round to do anything to Weidman. Same with Yoel Romero. Gegard Mousasi had a bit of a scrap. Round 2 comes around. He tags him with that knee. You know the situation. Whatever Luke Rockhold took until round 4. The only people who have been able to KO Chris Weidman early in a fight is a light heavyweight in Dominic Reyes that arguably beat John Jones. So, like, I think people are underestimating Weidman. I don't see him being finished, at least until round 3. And if Uriah Hall has lost 2 rounds to Weidman, it means he's been ragdolled, in my opinion, and I don't think he's going to have the strength or the power to finish him in round 3. There is some good money to be made by picking Uriah Hall in round 3. That is a tendency. He does take a little bit of a while to get warmed up, but this is another thing I want to talk about with Uriah Hall. He has always been a guy who struggles with the mental side of fighting. He was very open about this on The Ultimate Fighter with Chael Sonnen, where he was talking about how scared he was. He doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want to fail. It takes him ages to get into the flow of things sometimes because of how off he is in the early rounds, how timid he is in the early rounds. He doesn't want to lose so badly that it gets into his mind and he doesn't perform the way he wants to in those early rounds. How do you think he's going to feel if he's that timid against guys he's never fought before? How's he going to feel in those early rounds against a guy who completely dominated him in round 1 and KO'd him last time? I think he's going to be even more timid in those early rounds. And I think Weidman's going to play the stand-up for a little bit in the first minute and then shoot for a takedown, get it, and keep Uriah Hall on the ground for the rest of the round, in all honesty. If Antonio Carlos Jr. can do it, I'm hedging my bets that Weidman can do it too. I know Uriah Hall won that fight on significant strikes just by being a little bit busier in certain scrambles, and also, of course, that knockdown did save him in one of those rounds. But Chris Weidman, I feel like, is a little bit busier with his grappling. He does go for more ground and pound. He goes for more submission attempts than Antonio Carlos Jr. as well. I like his arm triangle. I think that's a really good move. I don't see him submitting Uriah Hall, but I do see him being busy enough on top to secure those first 2 rounds. And I'll call it a 29-28 Chris Weidman win. He's still my boy. I don't care what anyone says. And also, Uriah Hall's tough as fuck because his brother, let's talk about this for a second, because I watched that little countdown episode, or not the countdown episode, but that little Brothers Warden, or whatever it was, Brothers Protector, whatever it was that they put out about Chris Weidman on the YouTube channel. His brother is like a legit fucking psychopath cunt. But I know they tried to make it sound like, it was just tough love between brothers. Weidman literally had broken his shoulder, and his brother was punching his shoulder in and out of place. Like some fucking dead-eyed fucking downy. Sorry for saying that, but like, seriously. What the fuck is wrong with his brother? Do not trust him with knives. Like, what a fucking weirdo. Why would he... Like, there's brotherly love. Like, trust me, I've been fucked up by my older brother as well, but like... There's levels. There's levels. When there's a broken bone, it's time to call the fucking ambulance. It's not time to fucking punch the bone out of place and make your brother cry in agony on the ground and do nothing to help him. Like, it's weirdness, but I think Weidman's going to be tough enough to take this one against Uriah Hall. I see it working out really well for him, and the winner of this one, in my opinion, is going to be looking at the winner of Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian. Most likely, the winner of that one's going to be on a one-fight win streak. They're going to need a little bit more momentum before they get jumped right back into the top 5. So I think the winner of Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian, perfect for the winner of Weidman versus Uriah Hall in the main event of a fight night. Make it happen, and then after that one, we can jump these guys into the top 3, the top 5, or if either one of these men wanted to be such a fucking genius that they never will be, they will not do this. Either one of them who wins, if Uriah Hall gets his hand raised and if Chris Weidman gets his hand raised, neither one of them will do this, but they should. No one is calling out Jared Cannonier. He's number 4 in the division. He's coming off a loss. He's coming off a massive long layoff and a broken arm, and he's an old man as well. Fucking jump on that opportunity. The winner of this bout should call out Jared Cannonier. If not, they're going to get the winner of Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian, which I don't mind anyway, because Darren Till's made it clear now with his memes on his Instagram that he's sort of targeting a Derek Brunson fight, and why wouldn't he? It looks like they're going to do Marvin Vettori versus Paulo Costa. Whitaker versus Adesanya is a must. That has to happen next. Cannonier's stuck right there in the open. Maybe they do Jared Cannonier versus Kelvin Gastelum, but Gastelum's going to need some time off. Winner of this one, call out Jared Cannonier. If you don't get it, you're fighting a winner of Hermansson versus Shabazian. But good stuff in the middleweight division. Looking forward to this. I can't wait to see how it goes. I think it's going to be a little bit of an anticlimactic bout. I think Weidman will really out-grapple him in those early rounds and dominate Uriah Hall. And something that a lot of people need to take into consideration as well. I know that Weidman is an older guy, but, like, the same can be said about Uriah Hall. All of the comments that people say about Chris Weidman, you're chinny, you're old, you haven't got it anymore. Just because Uriah Hall's on a bit of a win streak against guys like Bevon Lewis and other guys outside the rankings, he's also 36. I don't know who's been KO'd more, but I'd hedge a bet that it's somewhat even, in all honesty, because I've seen Uriah Hall hit the canvas a bunch of times. But, like, I don't see how Uriah Hall wins this one. I think Weidman's going to be a little bit too big. He's bigger than Antonio Carlos Jr. He pushes a better pace than Antonio Carlos Jr. He's better than Antonio Carlos Jr. He's got better grappling than Antonio Carlos Jr. He's got better stand-up than Antonio Carlos Jr. I don't see how Hall's going to win this one. Going with Weidman. He's still my boy. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. And the loser of this one, in my opinion, is going to be somewhere near 37 years of age, coming off a loss, unless they want to take a matchup with like a Makhmud Muradov. I'd call it quits, because you don't want to take a matchup with Makhmud Muradov right now, I'll tell you that much for sure. Goodbye, see you later, click that button up there, toodle pip.